Greetings, gamers, and welcome to episode 4, season 6 of Bro Pi Gamma, the Gamers Podcast. I am your GM Byron, and of course with me is my co-host Howard.
Greetings.
A little late this week in the actual recording. We hopefully won't be late in the posting, but that's because you had one last reenactment for the year, if I remember right.
Yeah, and some serious personal tragedies. This was a rough weekend for me. Yes, my grandmother died on Sunday. I found out that one of my
dad's side or mom's side?
Mom's side. I found out one of my honor sisters was in a nearly fatal car accident, and she's currently in the hospital.
I did read about that. How is she doing?
She's doing well. She's a gamer, running games. She's running her own D&D campaigns.
Please tell me from the hospital.
Yeah, actually, she had she's a true.
Awesome.
I got her into gaming, and
I remember.
Yeah,
this is Amber, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so I got her in, and we did some gaming, whatever, together. And then, she came up for Dragon Con a couple years ago, and she was in my games. And then she went home, and at the time, she was, the people that she was hanging out with mostly were big gamers. And then that group kind of fell apart or whatever, and she started spending a lot more time doing her focusing on being a firefighter. She is a firefighter and a hero. And motorcycles. She's actually a motorcycle club because the firefighters have a motorcycle club, and she's big into those too. And I kind of assumed that she'd given up gaming just because she was so busy with the other ones, but no. It turns out that when everything else collapsed, she picked up the GM screen or DM screen. I'm sorry, Dungeons & Dragons, the DM screen.
Oh, whatever.
And has
tomatoes, damn it.
Well, yeah, but she's been kicking ass ever since, and you know how incredible intelligent she is. She's been telling me some of the stuff she's been doing, and I'm just so she is, of course, in the hospital, on some serious medication in excruciating pain because she was nearly killed and it really messed her up bad. she's going to survive, but we're still trying to find out what the fallout is.
I was about to say, do we know what kind of condition she'll be in afterwards, or?
No, we have no idea, but our hearts, our prayers and thoughts are with her. But
always.
So we're on. She's half dazed from drugs, and I brought up gaming, and she lit up and she started talking about her campaigns, and she's lying in a hospital bed, shattered on something better than morphine, and she is coherently explaining her campaign as a GM. I'm like, I have never been more proud than this moment. That, people, is a gamer. So hats off to her. She is my gamer pick of the week. Oh my god.
Yeah, so that's impressive to be able to do it from the hospital on the pain meds.
Oh, she's amazing. She's amazing. So I have to send her a link to this.
So when are we getting her on the podcast?
You know what? I will talk to her about that. She'll probably have be able to do it, and I'll have to figure out her schedule. But I'd love to have her on the podcast, and she would have some incredible insights. Very intelligent young woman, incredibly talented, and just dear to my heart. So I'll talk to her about it and get her on the podcast. But she's doing okay.
She was kind of your protege when you were down in Florida, I think, right?
She still is, really, in a lot of ways. Yeah, she's
but you're not physically near each other like you were back then, so that's why.
No, but in a lot of ways, her and my relationship was in a lot of ways similar to my relationship back in military academy.
I remember that because I remember when you were like, dude, you need to talk to her, and shot her contact info to me, and I'm like, all right.
Well, at the time, I was, it was an awkward situation, but it has worked out well, and she has just blossomed. She's really incredible. Like I said, she's a firefighter. She's a hero. She's an incredible person, and so we're all pulling for her. She's going to be okay. Nothing gets her down for long. So
that's good. So, and I'm sorry to hear about the grandmother too.
Yeah,
because I believe I met both of your grandmothers, so I have actually met, I actually met a good chunk of your family. So
you've met almost all of them, and she passed away on Sunday. Funeral is going to be Wednesday, so that's going to be interesting. So yeah, it's been. The last couple weeks has been really kind of crazy for me with family issues and my grandmother failing, and it's been hard for me. But I've been trying to. I actually got ordered off the field of the event. The Sunday morning battle got canceled. So by the way, quick back up. Sorry, dude. I have to do it, dude. Especially, I wasn't going to call you. But that battle was so fierce. There was so much gunfire that my body was shaking from all the artillery. So I'm like, you know what? This is awesome. So, from your perspective, with the phone, when you turn on the phone, what did you hear?
So, all right. So to explain it, Howard did one of these. I'm at a reenactment, and I'm going to call Howard, put him on speakerphone, and stick him in my pocket again. At least you didn't call me dead on the field, because, you know.
That's always fun.
So at first, I get this call from Howard, and I'm like, hey, man, what's up? And then I don't really hear much of anything at first. I'm like, dude, hello? And then I start hearing, and I'm like, motherfucker, put me on damn speakerphone.
It's like the best drunk dial ever.
And so like, so I'm hearing like this, and then all of a sudden I hear this, and I'm like, that has got to be fucking Howard.
It was.
So I sit there, I let it go for like 5 minutes, and then finally
5.5 minutes.
Finally I hang up, and then I text him. I'm like, was that you, like hooping and yelling? He's like, yes. I'm like, all right.
Well, anyway, the Sunday battle got canceled, and because of rain, because the roads getting into it were getting slick, and of course artillery, man, we got trucked, we got to get out, and you know, slick roads and artillery is not good. I mean, heck, I've jackknifed my truck, and we've jackknifed the rig a couple of times, so you got to be real careful because those things, they don't play. Like, I mean, we almost lost at this event. Actually, she was coming off we were dropping her off the trailer, and we lost control for about 6 seconds. And there is a serious brown short moment when that thing's coming towards you. These guns weigh like many thousands of pounds with the case on it, or with the carriage and the gun. And the thing about it is you know, once it breaks free from its moorings, there's really nothing you can do about it. I mean, it's either going to hit something like a tree and stop, and which will probably crack the carriage, or it's going to keep going until it hits a ditch. And if you have it between it and the tree and or ditch, you're just a grease smear. So we were taking this thing off the trailer. Fortunately, well, I was up on top of the trailer. Now, you know, just so you guys understand, and this will help GMs if you ever want to do realism in a game, like for like a military campaign. The best time to really screw your players is not during battle. It's when they're trying to load or unload equipment, because that's when people die. Like, because in battles, you're waiting for it. When you're just moving the gun off the truck and it happens to slip and crush somebody, that really shocks the hell out of your players. But anyway,
unless the pyrotechnist guy like crosses his wires.
Oh God, I've seen that. Anyway,
yeah.
So
I remember that story.
So this thing's cutting loose, and she starts sliding down the ramps, and I'm sort of marginally connected to her. So she starts going down.
Wait. Okay. I think that requires some explanation. Okay, what do you mean by marginally connected?
All right. So the way the guns are loaded and unloaded is, all right, Civil War artillery. The basic anatomy of a gun is you have the barrel, which everyone knows, right? That's the thing that the shell actually shoots out of, the big black thing, right? It's a tube. All right. Then you got the wheels, and everyone knows about those, and we use Amish wheels on all our guns. And then you have the carriage.
Okay, the reason for that being?
All right, dude, I want you to search the internet and find me non-Amish wagon wheels today. The Amish are the only ones making quality wagon wheels.
Good point.
Deal is,
well, dude, I didn't know if like there was someone in the unit that like could make them or something. All right,
no,
I wouldn't put it past some of you people.
No. Wainwright's it's one of those skills that like hoopers for like barrels. It's gone out of it's basically we're losing that skill. And only people still making them the traditional way that can stand up to what we want is the Amish. Except you can't tell them what it's for, and they will straight up ask you. They're like, what are you going to use these for? And you have to say like farm equipment or a wagon or something like that.
Because they won't sell it to you otherwise.
They won't sell it to you. So we straight up lie to the Amish to get our wheels. So the dark side of reenacting. Anyway,
lying to the Amish, which I'm sorry, dude. To an extent, like spiritually, lying to the fucking Amish is kind of high up there, because it's like, why the fuck are you lying to the Amish?
Because we need wheels.
What does that ever do to you?
Yeah, no, I've never personally lied.
You need the wheels. All right, moving on.
Yeah, I've never personally lied to the Amish. I just use Okay, so no, I haven't. I don't talk to the Amish suppliers. That's just so bad. I have been there when we got the gunpowder off the back of a truck, but I've never talked to the Amish wheel suppliers. This is all true, people. Anyway, so you've actually got the carriage, which is between the wheels. It's that thing that, you know, it goes down at an angle, and there's a little thing that comes off. That's called the trail.
Okay.
Right? You got the carriage and the trail. trunnions and all sorts of stuff. But anyway, the trail is the back part of it. Now, that's what sits on the ground. That's the 3 part of the tripod, the wheels and the trail.
Yeah.
All right.
That's what lifts up. That usually connects to the
Right.
horse or the tractor or whatever to move it.
In this case, me.
Oh, okay.
So it has the ring, which is what you use to connect it. I mean, it's basically like the old version of a trailer hitch. I mean, it's old Ye Colonial trailer hitch. Well, I was hanging on to the old Ye Colonial trailer hitch because I'm the one steering it. The reason I'm the one steering it is you got to understand. So this thing weighs thousands of pounds. I don't know. I think it's like 1,500 pounds, something like that, or what, maybe more. Anyway, so the way it's on the trailer is we have to get it all into as compact a space as possible, and you have the gun, which is what I just told you, and then you have the caisson or the limber box. And this, well, caisson's actually a separate entity, but made up of a couple limber boxes. The limber box is where the powder is, all right? And it literally is just 2 wheels, a box, and then a tongue. And the tongue is actually where you hook the team of horses up. So to make an artillery carriage, you take the limber box with the front 2 wheels and a tongue, and you actually hook up the team of horses to the tongue. And then you hook that ring on the back of the trail, which Byron just identified correctly, onto the back of the limber box, creating the back set of wheels, the 2 wheels, creating an actual 4-wheeled carriage drawn by horses that can flex in the middle. That's how you move artillery. Who knew? All right.
The things you learn on Ropai Gamma.
Wait. But the way it's hooked up.
Oh no, we're not done yet.
Wait. No, the way it's on the back of the back of the trailer is the fact is that you've got they push the limber box all the way to the back of the trailer, nearest the rear bumper of the truck. But the pin that little ring goes into, and it's got a real name, and I'm just, for whatever reason, it's escaping me right now. I'll remember it as soon as the podcast is over. But on the trail, sits on top. Basically, we have to lift it up. Said what?
Did you just call it the cock ass?
No, no. But I will next time I see it.
No, I was just instead of podcast, it sounded like you said cock ass. I was about to be like, what?
So anyway, so there's an iron pin that's bolted to the base of the trailer, and you have to slide the trail of the gun back up to it, lift it up over this pin, and drop it on, and then we have a cotter pin which holds it into place. Sounds simple. The only problem is that pin is right underneath the limber box. So the clearance is only about 2.5, 3 feet, which means someone has to crawl on their hands and knees underneath a box full of black powder on a slippery deck, and then lift about half of this 1,500 pound or whatever it is gun up into the air, and then lay it on top of this little iron pin. Well, understandably, I'm the guy who gets volunteered to do this. Because, I mean, honestly, most of the guys physically just can't. I mean, we've had more people like get badly injured just trying to lift this thing up. Talk about hernia. I mean, it rips up your back, it rips up your groin.
And for the listeners, Howard is not bullshitting. He is one of the strongest people I fucking know.
I mean, it's rough, dude. I mean, I hurt myself when I do it. Like, I mean, when I walk away from that, I mean, things are pulling. But I mean, it's hard. I used to have Nick do it because Nick could lift it up without any trouble. Me and Nick were the ones. Anyway, now Nick's gone. It's just me. So anyway, but that ring, I have to hold on to it to guide the thing, because if I'm not steering the boat and it goes off one side, then it'll fall to one side. And if those wheels are great up and down, but if it falls sideways and it hits the wooden spokes, it'll snap those spokes. And again, then we have to get them back from the Amish suppliers. And as we've already gone over, that ain't easy. So we're coming down off the trail. We're coming down off the ramps, and she let go. Like, I mean, she started slipping and sliding, and the guy had to jump out of the way, otherwise lose his fingers. Well, that meant that, like, I lost a lot of my traction. So I'm holding on to the ring, and it just takes off. And I either let go of the ring and let this thing crash down and possibly damage it, or I desperately try to hold on to the ring and guide it where it's going and possibly die. So I held on in there. And,
so of course Howard took the second option.
I held on in there. The guys on the right side managed to sort of.
Dude, I'm sure if you really wanted a Medal of Honor, well, they would just give it to you at this point.
Well, anyway, I managed to hold on, and the guys on the right side, on the right wheel, they managed to hang in there. So we got it to the ground without too much trouble. But there was that moment right when it came loose the first time, and keep in mind we were only at that point about 6 inches from the ground on a ramp. But I gotta say, it's that moment where you feel it beginning to let go. And and by the way, the real problem was, and everyone's like, dude, it would just hit the ground and stop. Well, no, we were on a pretty steep hill. That was the problem.
It's
And
called
below
physics,
us,
people.
yeah, below us were like people. Like I'm talking on the downside of the hill, unsuspecting people in camp. If this thing had gone and kept going, it would just crash right through a camp, just crushing people. So, but we got it. No one got hurt, at least not during that exercise. And got the gun down, and I only pulled like one muscle in the process, and all was good. So, but anyway, that was fun. And anyway, so that was the battle. That was on Saturday, and then Sunday it rained out, and we had to get the thing back up onto the trailer in reverse, up a hill with raining, which was even more fun. So, yeah, that was my weekend.
So wait a second. So how did you get ordered off the field?
Okay, so what happened is we were packing up. Now I knew my grandmother was failing on Saturday, but Friday night my mom had called me or texted me and said you need to go to the event. There's no point in you just standing around waiting because she could last another week, another month, or she could die today. And so I went ahead and went. All right, and basically Saturday night, like late or early Sunday morning, the text came through that she was doing really bad. Well, I got to the battlefield, and they canceled the event or the battle, and I was like, well, cool. I'll just pack everything up, and then I'll be back in time. And my family was planning to go see her Sunday evening, so I was like, dude, I can make it back 3:00. I mean, if I just flat hoof it, I can pack the stuff up, jump in my truck, and be at home by 3, and just forgo any shower or whatever because I was in civvies, and just go straight to the hospital bed. Unfortunately, while I was packing up, when she actually passed away. So the problem is that I was, doing stuff. I was trying to keep up an upbeat with everything going on with Amber and there have been some other events and that. And they finally asked me what was going on. I explained to them that she was not doing well. They said, well, don't you need to go? And I'm like, no, I mean, it's okay. Well, then my phone started exploding when she actually passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I answered it, the unit was like, well, what happened? I'm like, well, she passed away. So I just, let me help you finish packing and then I'll go. And they're like, Howard, there are certain things that are more important than you being the NCO of a fake military unit. Go to your family. so they actually ordered me off. Yeah, they did. No.
Obviously, it took an order to get him off the field.
The colonel's wife kicked me out.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, it was bad. Like she was like, leave. I was like, yes, ma'am. So I packed up my stuff, hugged everyone, and I got back at about 2:30, about 30 minutes before I would have. And I was able to actually. At the end of the story is I was able to get together with my grandfather and the rest of my family, and it went well, But yes, I have a thing about meeting my obligations, and so I didn't want to just abandon my unit in the middle of the rain, in the middle of the mud. But they were like GTFO, so that's how I got ordered off the field. We still on, dude?
Yeah.
I'm
sorry. I'm shaking my head.
Okay. No. I almost got thrown off a field once. Have I told you that? They almost actually threw me off in the middle of an event?
No.
Yeah. Okay. So real quick.
Story time again.
I keep saying this, but okay. So we were at this big flat field, right? And it was right near the coast. And it was like dry and grassy, and the wind was just whipping because we're out on the coast. The wind's whipping real bad, and our guns were in a line, but they were in a basically enfilade. Pretty much that one gun was a little further ahead, and we were sort of a staggered line because the way we were facing the battlefield. Well, the gun next to us was actually slightly ahead of our plane of our plane of our guns, so we all had to sort of angle our guns a little bit so that we weren't blowing each other's ears out. But it was still, they were slightly in front of us, which wasn't great, but it was just the way it had to be. I told you that to tell you this. So, oh God, what's going on? My God, my phone is blowing up. I'm so sorry, people. This never happens.
I guess to put your phone on vibrate, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Okay, so anyway, long story short, what happened was, the guys next to us on our right, I was on the front of my gun, and the guys to our right fired a shot that actually lit the grass on fire. Like it was like smoldering. Well,
okay, so we're not talking like open flames.
Wait. It hit.
Oh.
It started smoldering, and I'm standing there. Well, the wind hits it. I'm standing in the middle of a grassy field, dry grass, and the wind hits this thing, and it flared. I mean, it flared up like a bellows, and it starts moving in line with the wind, like between the two guns toward my limber box. which has about 40 pounds of black powder in it, and it's wood.
Oh, good.
So it starts moving toward me in the direction it's getting bigger. Now, fires, as anyone who's ever dealt with fires, as long as they're small, are manageable. But they hit a certain point, which it's like, oh God, it's a fire. Like, oh my God, it's a fire!
Yeah.
Well, this was right on the cusp of being uncontrollable, right? And I'm standing in the field. Now, there is a rule in artillery, and it is the inviolable law of artillery, and that is that you never step before the plane of a gun, meaning where the barrel ends, that is called the plane of the gun. It's an imaginary plane that starts at the ground and shoots into the sky, and it goes left and right, and it goes out 40 feet in all directions. You never step beyond that, because it's what we euphemistically refer to as the cone of death. If you happen to be beyond the plane of the gun when it fires, your chance of dismemberment or instantaneous death due to the concussive forces is astronomically high. I could be standing right next to the barrel, and as long as I'm behind the mouth of the barrel and it goes off, it may rattle me, but it's not going to kill me. If I take one step forward and it goes off, then all of a sudden concussive forces, physics being what they are, movement of air, we're talking about blown out eardrums, ruptured eyes, ruptured sinuses, possible concussion, and death. All right? So this is no joke. I mean, we're talking about – this is like –
Even the blank shots you're shooting.
Oh, God, yeah. Oh, no, yeah, you can die. I mean, one mistake and you're cooked on this one. So anyway, so the long and the short of it is this fire starts, but because of the way our guns were positioned, since they were slightly ahead of us, the fire was in effect in front of my gun, off to the right,
Lord.
but it was still beyond the plane, and it was in the cone of death. And we were loaded.
Oh, even
so
better.
I shout to the guy. I'm like, dude, control your fire. And he looks at the fire, looks at me, and then just turns back to what he's doing, because in effect it wasn't his problem, because it was behind his gun coming toward me. I'm like, you just lit the freaking grass on fire, and you're just like, whatever. Not to mention not 10 feet behind actually more like 5 feet behind my caisson was the line of civilians, including my niece. So if the fire reaches it and it explodes, it is a wooden box filled with black powder. That's a claymore. It's
very primitive claymore, but claymore nonetheless.
So I'm like, I'm just in my mind's eye, I'm seeing the headline news, reenactment gone horribly wrong, and the civilians with like splinters sticking out of their face and stuff like this. And I'm like, all right, if this fire gets any bigger, we're not going to be able – we don't have what we need here to control. I mean, I have water, but only a limited supply for the gun. I don't have infinite amounts of water, and if it gets any bigger, I won't have enough water to put it out at that point. So – but it's behind my gun or in front of my gun. Now, they could have just stepped backwards and dealt with it, but they wouldn't. So I made the decision. I'm an NCO, and I'm like, screw it. It is better that I endanger my own life and break the law, basically the law of the rule of artillery, because I know the risks. So I did. I grabbed our mop bucket, and my canteen off the gun. I stepped in front of our gun and put out the fire. Well, my colonel turns around and sees me like dicking around in front of the gun in the middle of a battle when it's hot. I put out the fire. I almost didn't. I almost did not have enough water. I stepped back into my position, and then I heard I could hear him coming. And he ripped me up one side and down in front of God and everybody. I got an ass chewing. Like, it was beautiful. Like, I mean, honestly, like, in retrospect, it was actually poetic in its profanity. And he almost threw me off the field. The only reason he did not throw me off the field was because of the reputation I have, is that he understood that there had to have been a reason. And in effect, and I explained to him. He said, basically, why he asked me, and I won't use the terms he used, but why did you do it? He was a little bit more colorful.
A little more usage of the colorful metaphors.
Yes. And I explained, and he said that does not give you any blah 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 blank and blank all sort of right to blah 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 endanger insurance blah blah blah. I should throw you off the blah blah blah. Anyway. After the fact, though, like, of course, now the provost, who was headed in my direction, saw my commander ripping me open, and he turned around and went back to his post. Because if my commander hadn't torn me apart, the provost would have gotten to me. If the provost gotten to me, he might have called the cops. So my commander actually, by publicly like eviscerating me, he actually was protecting me from being assaulted by or being, having another authority figure coming in who might have been worse and taking legal action. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah.
And he couldn't apologize because what he said was right. I mean, I did something very, very, very dangerous. And if you're listening to the podcast, people never play with black powder. It will kill you. So anyway, long and short of it, that's what happened. So I actually, my commander almost threw me off the field. Later on, his second in command, the lieutenant colonel, came to me and actually said he saw the whole thing, and he basically said, in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. So
Yeah.
But yeah, I almost got my ass thrown off the field.
All right. So enough about reenacting. Even though it is pretty much LARP.
It is LARPing, and if any reenactor tells you it isn't, well, they're never going to believe it, but it is. Anyway, moving on.
Sorry. Unfortunately, while you were ranting story
I have
time,
to silence this. I'm sorry, my grandfather's calling.
Well, crap. All right. Well, you know what? We'll edit. So pause.
I'm so sorry about that, everybody. Oh my God. I was being I was asked to be a pallbearer. Sorry.
Oh, goody.
Okay, moving on. Let's do the podcast. I need something to get my mind off all this.
All right, hang on just a sec. Sorry. While you were talking, and then while you paused, I've been talking to the woman who's going to be doing our site redesign, because she's helping me make sure I get the MP3s up to where they need to be, so that people, because apparently where I'm keeping the MP3s currently for this season, not the best place, because I just got an email saying Jorge was trying to access one of the MP3s, and I'm like, that's supposed to be set so where he can just get it. So thank you, Jorge, for letting me know.
Jorge, you are my hero, buddy. We didn't have Rope Pie t-shirts, so we can send them to people randomly. I want a Rope Pie t-shirt.
I do too, man. I've been wanting one for a while. All right, so
why don't we? Okay, pin it. We're gonna pin that. Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Broke ass gamers. Need I remind you of that?
Can you please introduce tonight's topic?
No, because it's my story time. Damn it.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, oh, that's right. Enough with the duck. I love how the fact that we have no video. I knew exactly what the hell that was. Anyway. Okay, so the Star Wars game has come to an end. I was able to officially end the damn game. Some bitch.
I like how you refer to your game. That's nice.
What?
You sound so excited.
What? You know what? Shut up. Anyway. So this game that was only supposed to last a few months, that got started back in like February-ish, somewhere around in there, somewhere around the beginning of the year, and it was put on, life support because the one player had to go down to Georgia for military training, and he didn't know when he was going to be available. So he was finally available 2 weeks ago, and so I was like, all right, let's finish this. Now, I will fully admit, I was rushed. I was not as fully prepared as I probably should have been. The story of my life. And I was rushed because I was trying to end it in that one session. Now, granted, I had taken steps to be able to play later than usual that Sunday. Because we had to kind of our Sunday evenings are usually we go, we sit down, it used to be Liz and mine's date night. But then when Cyrus, moved in with us, it's just basically try to stay off of the computers and watch Arrow.
Good luck.
So, hey, that's so far so good. And that, by the way, that is good. I think you actually might get a kick out of that series, because I want to see your head explode at just how much people lie in that damn series.
Oh, my wife and I watch it. I'm well familiar.
Watch it?
Oh yeah, we watch it. We watch on Netflix when the seasons come out.
Yeah. As I say, we're almost done with season 2.
I do enjoy the show, but they do. Everyone's lying to everybody. It's great.
Oh yeah. There's not a damn person that tells the truth in that whole series. People die. It's like, you're lying.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I took steps. So we actually watched Arrow the night before. So I took steps to be able to go longer. However, some of my players had another game at that they had to be to with Salo at 7. So I was like, fuck. So it was kind of rushed, and although I wasn't too happy with the ending, and some of my players were very much not happy with it. Screw it, it's done. So, and it actually, one of the player characters completed the ritual for the dark side accidentally. And I do mean accidentally, she did not intend to do it that way, but she did. And so the ritual got completed for the dark side, and game over. So that's a big weight off my shoulders, because I was like, fuck it, it's done. Now, since we're a little late in recording this yesterday, I started my 10 Seas game. Now, my 10 Seas campaign is originally got started from inspiration from a couple of video games. Secret of Mana and Skies of Arcadia is what really kind of spawned it. It has since also been kind of I've got random ideas. It's been one of my campaign settings where I can take random ideas and cram them in there and they'll actually work. You know how you get some crazy idea and you look at all your worlds and I've got no other world I can do this idea in. So either I have to ditch it or I have to create a whole new world just for this one fucking idea. Well, I have been able to cram some of other worlds and ideas into this and make it work. So it's kind of almost like my scrap pile of ideas that has coalesced into a world.
Happens with you.
Especially with as many worlds as I have to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
So now again, I mean, the Secret of Mana has become the real main influence on the world. For those of you who don't know, Secret of Mana was a game on the Super Nintendo. It actually, the Secret of Mana series was actually a branch of Final Fantasy. It got started as Final Fantasy Adventures for the original Game Boy, which I've heard recently Square Enix has completely redone and is releasing on the iOS. So I'm salivating at that because the graphics, it's gone from to go from Game Boy style graphics to full blown 3D, color. Yeah, it's great. So anyway, but if you look up Secret of Mana, the art style and the style of the game is very kind of cartoony, cutesy. I mean, there's still, it's still monsters and hacking and dealing with death and someone trying to take over the world and so forth and so on. But, the art style, I remember when I got Liz because it was also one of the few, RPG style games that's multiplayer, because it's not turn-based, it's real time. And you control 3 characters. And you can either, as if you're playing solo, you can change control. You can still kind of control the other characters as you're controlling your main character, or you can change between them, or you can have someone else get in and play too. So you can actually play together. So I was like, hey Liz, she's not too much into video games, but I'm trying to work on her. So I was like, hey, why don't you play? And I'm high level on this save file. I was in high level. And I went to one of the beginning areas. I was like, let's go to a beginning area so you won't accidentally die. And so she sees one of the monsters, and the first basic monster is called a rabbite. It's literally this yellow blob with rabbit ears and kind of a rabbit face and a little cotton ball tail. And she goes, oh, it's so cute. I'm like, hun, that's a monster. It's about to attack you. And then it did. It tried to eat her. And she's just like, ah! So I'm explaining all this because usually I try to go for a somewhat serious game. Okay? I mean, I know there's going to be goofing off. I know there's going to be fun. I've got a very jovial personality. Anyway, so I know there's going to be some slapstick that comes into the game anyway. But overall, I try to shoot for the example I usually give is I try to shoot for Star Wars. I usually get Spaceballs. I try to go for serious. I usually get a lot of slapstick. This time, though, I was not banking on serious at all. I was like, considering how this world was put together to begin with, the sources of its inspiration, and then the group I'm running with, which, by the way, Cyrus is in the group. my mentor, who is all about the slapstick. Although he was actually one of the more serious characters for the first run. I wasn't banking on getting a serious guy. I'm expecting Spaceballs. Which, unfortunately, I'm afraid it now means I'm going to get something even more silly. But hopefully not. So, and sure enough, as the game was progressing, I got hilarity ensued, and just, I face palmed quite a bit, and yeah, but I got that game going. Finally got the game started. I'm testing out more aspects of D6 Universe, which didn't get tested in the last game. So, and I'm seeing that it's either I'm gonna have to tweak some more, or eventually I'm just gonna have to be like, this is just the way it is. I don't know which yet. That's something you and I can discuss later. But that got started, so yay for that. Good. I'm hoping that we can actually start the last battle for Epic Game this up and coming Saturday, which, by the way, the maps are good to go, right?
Should be. I need to tweak a few things, make sure they're good, and yeah, but I'll have them ready for that by the Saturday.
Cool. So hopefully that'll be happening. Karma game is going well. We're actually getting back to there was some character development stuff going on in this last city that we're in, but now we're getting back to another instance of the actual campaign plot happening. And I think that's about it. So that's been my gaming. Okay, so now topic.
Okay. Do you want me to give it, or do you want to give it?
It's your topic. You go.
All right. So in gaming, there are game rules, which everyone understands is game mechanics. In every book, every system's got its own. And then there are gaming rules, and that's a whole different ball of wax. And as I've explained to a lot of young gamers, the real challenge and the real hallmark of a good GM isn't being able to come up with a story, and isn't being able to memorize rules. It's being able to manage players. And I know a lot of great guys with great, gaming ideas, great story concepts, great grasp of mechanics, and they totally, they totally break down when they actually try to run a game, because a huge part of gaming is the management of people, not characters. And this is very difficult. And it's also the part of it that's almost, in a sense, for me, I often think it's one of the hardest things for GMs to master. And it really, really shows you the difference between, inexperienced GMs and experienced GMs. And we've had plenty of examples in the past of where, Byron and I have both broken down, and in our ability, and, in learning experience, we talked about that. But what I thought we'd do tonight is talk about how ideas, techniques, how we go about setting that up. And what I'm talking about is effectively sort of the social contract rules for our gaming groups. And I thought we'd talk about it in basically 4 basic phases is how we developed ours. Do we actually sit down and write them down? Do they develop over time? Do we just, cause, gaming magazines, we've even read articles or people talk about them, that sort of stuff. How do we develop our rules?
We've gone over some of those articles in the show.
Yes. But how do we do, and the question is, how do we do ours, since other people might be able to take some cues from us? 2, how do we communicate those to our players? And this is really important because communication is key, which is one of the hallmarks of this podcast. Mm-hmm. And so this is a good idea about, giving people ideas how to convey that information. The third thing is, how do we enforce it? Because enforcement's really, if you have a rule or a guideline and there's no enforcement, it's kind of pointless. It's kind of like speeding limits in Georgia. They're pretty much pointless at this point. Because the new law that if you ride someone's bumper and the cops see it, the dude whose bumper's getting ridden is the guy who gets the ticket, not the speeder who's doing it. Okay.
What?
Go slowpoke law. Yes, slowpoke laws. If you are in the left-hand lane and you are going the speed limit or above, and the guy comes up behind you trying to go faster and the cop sees it, the guy who is not going fast enough, basically if you're not breaking the speed limit enough, you get the ticket, not the guy who's speeding. Okay. And then the last thing is, what happens if, let's say, you set you come up with the rules, you communicate them, you enforce them, and then what happens after the fact, especially if there's a conflict? So, would you like to go first with how you came up with your in-house rules? Or would you like me to go first?
I can go first. It's going to be very loose though, because that's pretty much how my in-house rules are. I mean, mine mainly got developed at our time at RMA. It was RMA and AIW. RMA was definitely the start, though, not only because that was when I really started GMing, but we were a bunch of 14 to 18-year-olds. So, immaturity galores. And that was evident in the in the games we were running and whatnot, because we were it was our de-stressor. And I'm sorry, I realize that I'm not discounting other people's stress, things that are stressful in their life, but dear God, going to military boarding school and still trying to pass your classes is stress, because it's pretty much fight for survival, fight for your sanity, and then try to get good grades in the process. So, and gaming was how we de-stressed. So, a lot of those games, though, we had serious moments. There were a lot of dick and fart jokes and, and whatnot. But I even remember that even then, knowing this, we still had to actually, clamp down on some things, because some people were still taking it too far, especially considering, if those remember in earlier episodes, we only had an hour a night. So we had to get shit done.
Yes.
Pardon me. So that's where my rules really started. Then they got really refined at AIW. They got put to the test at Greenville in wonderful G Vegas, North Carolina. And they've kind of mellowed a little since coming up to Pennsylvania. It's interesting, the whole progression there. But I usually try to, whenever someone new enters the group, I try to inform them of how shit's gonna be, from there on out. So I try to tell them, as we're bringing someone new into the group. Though sometimes I feel I should probably have refresher courses for my more seasoned players. The ones that have been in my games a lot. It's a combination of just common sense, or I'm a broken record, as to how I communicate it. But my main rules are just like communication, and it's funny. I even tell people how to try to communicate it with me, and they still don't listen. But no, dude, I kid you not. Like, because you remember part of the snafu we had at RMA.
Yeah.
Where apparently, like, I was pissing people off and didn't know it. And I almost left the group because of it. Because, finally when I was just like, well, shit, if this is how people are going to react to it without just coming and telling me, then fine, fuck y'all. I remember even shocked you that night. Mm-hmm. Which, that's one of my crowning achievements. I actually surprised Howard. But so after that, I especially like at AIW, I was like, okay, look, if y'all have a problem, come talk to me. And I just say, it's like, if it's in game, just be like, hey, Byron, I need to talk to you privately for a moment. Can we take 5? I even give them the dialogue to use. And I'm like, and this goes outside of game too. I'm just like, look, if you got to come tell me, but you got to do it right. You can't just be confrontational about it, because I'm going to get defensive. You just got to be like, hey, look, I need to talk to you, da-da-da-da-da, and if you want to do it in front of the group, fine. If not, pull me aside, and I was like, I've got no qualms about pausing game or even stopping game if someone's got to, talk to me serious. And apparently I was pissing people off at AIW left and right, and no one came and told me. And I even told them what to do. In game, out of game, doesn't matter. And they still don't listen to me. So I'm like, all right, well, that's fucking on you guys. Or they did it wrong. They tried to subversively, they didn't just come out and say it. They tried to, passive aggressive, and no, that doesn't work on me because I'm fucking blind. But anyway, so communication I always try to keep big. I also try to be very diplomatic in my groups. I try to very much be the majority wins out to an extent. I still do have to remind people, and I do this when I'm bringing in new people, but sometimes I've had to remind people, also it's like, I'm still the GM, and I usually have to say this because 9 times out of 10, it's true, I'm the GM. Whereas it's like, I realize what it says in the books, I realize what it may say on such and such, but 8 times out of 10, it's in my own world I've created. 9 times out of 10, I'm the GM. So therefore, I do have final say. Now, again, I try to be diplomatic, and also I'm very much, like one of my standing rules is players win on a tie. I always give ties to the players. What else? Because I don't have them written down. I don't, it's just from just over and over and over experience is where I get mine from. Let's see, players win on ties. I also, like, if I screw up and like forget something, I don't retcon. I was like, that's my own damn fault that I forgot it. Moving on. And 9 times out of 10, that's because that's giving the players an advantage. And I'm like, screw it, whatever. But if the players forget something, if they're just like, I forgot about this bonus I was supposed to be getting, or I forgot about this penalty, I'll either be like, all right, well, just remember it from here on out. Or I've even had some players be like, no, I want to go back because I should have been taking this penalty into account for this role, and I really want to go back, and in which case I'll be like, all right, well, shit, fine, all right. Or if it's a bonus, they're usually cool. It's like, okay, they don't try to go back. It's like, oh, I should have had that bonus, unless it was like, they just realized it in the roll. Like if they rolled to hit and rolled damage, they're like, oh, I was supposed to have like an extra D to damage. I was like, well, then roll the other D and let's move on. I tend to be very loose. I'm not very strict. And that's part of because of my GMing style, and because I'm very off the cuff. I bounce off of what the players give me. But there have been some times where I've had to, the famous come to Jesus meeting for the one Star Wars game down in North Carolina. That's where my GMing stuff really got tested, because I was like, I've got a group about ready to tear itself apart. And I've also had other games just completely blow up in my face before I had a chance to do anything. Like, I didn't even know there was a problem, and then just boom, and then the game was done. I'm like, well, screw it. But yeah, but overall, my the only real house rules I have is that, and yeah.
Sounds good.
It's very much like me. It's just kind of floating there in the cloud.
Yeah, I'm a little different.
Well, chop.
Yeah, actually, I have my game considerations, as you know, which aren't in fact rules, but they are the guidelines that I go by. And I started developing them at RMA, just like you did. But I actually started. For me, I started sort of writing down the most common incourteous behavior that I saw, and as time has gone on, and as I've gotten older, and I've added a few items. I think it started out at like 15 items, and I don't know, I'm up to like, after 18 years of gaming, I'm like up to like 20 maybe. I've added 5, but basically, I mean, they're very much common sense stuff. Like, if you're going to be late, call ahead of time. If you're going to miss, call ahead of time. Give me some heads up, that kind of stuff. Like, don't leave in the middle of combat. I can pull up the list, but I'm not going to. But I wrote them down. I actually wrote them down. And I developed them over a period of time, by observing behavior. And if I ended up, and the ones that got added, were in response to things that happened in games after high school, where the game considerations covered 99.9% of things, but every so often you run into something that's just so bizarre, some behavior that you just never even thought. Like, I never even thought anyone would do that.
Yeah.
I didn't have to make a rule about it, but okay. So, because I'm very much of, I want everyone to be on an even and fair playing field. And so I'm like, all right, well, clearly there are some strange people out there, so I do need to address this. Everyone needs to wear pants to game, that kind of stuff. Or a skirt or a dress or a kilt, or you just need to have your nether regions covered when you show up to my games. Just put it that way, that kind of stuff. You don't think it's an issue until some guy shows up drunk and he's wearing nothing but a t-shirt. It's like, okay, dude, that's totally inappropriate.
Yeah.
How did you drive like that? How did you stop to pick something up at the store?
Oh God.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, they say
and,
no
and
shirt,
again,
no shoes, no service. They don't say anything about pants.
they don't say no pants. Right. Funny, he said the same thing. So anyway, but no, like, I tried, and I've written them down, and I have them codified, and so that's how I developed them, and I developed them over a long period of time, and I try to condense, like, my guidelines are sort of catch-alls. I'm not targeting specific behaviors typically, but I'm targeting sort of a group of behaviors, or here I'm talking like a psychologist. Anyway, a classification of behaviors.
You are a psychologist.
But I know, right? But I did write them down, and I consider it something like a social contract in the sense that, and what the way I communicate it actually is I typically when I get a group together, the first game, we talk about, character development, all that sort of stuff. And one of the things I'll do is I'll break out the game considerations, and we will, as a group, go over them. And I always have to explain, like, look, I'm not targeting anyone here. I'm not calling people out. This is, what I'm doing here is I'm trying to create a safe and happy playing environment for everybody. These are the considerations that I have seen. These are the behaviors that I've seen become troublesome in games in the past. I've been doing this for, almost 20 years now. So what I'd like to do is work with all of you guys, go through the list. We're going to talk about each one. This is open for debate. We haven't started. This is for you to talk. And if you see something in here that you disagree with wholeheartedly, if you think that I'm being too strict or whatever, this is the time to talk about it, because this is a contract between you and me. I am committing to certain things, and you are committing to certain things, so that we can all have a good time. And then we go through them, list by list. We discuss them as a group, and people are like, yeah, I hate it when people do that, or I don't know, this thing, this looks like it's a little overreach. And I don't think I've ever really had anyone flat out say that they disagreed with any of my considerations, but we have, modified them as a group, made caveats, or so to speak.
Yeah.
All right, especially with people with families or whatever. So they're yeah, addendums, caveats and addendums. And then once we have all agreed, then everyone signs, and this is true, everyone signs theirs. And then I put a copy of their signed ones in the front of their binder, and I keep, my copy. That way, and I always put it at the front of the binder. That way, if there's ever an issue later on, and one of them is doing something, I can always, out of game, whatever, ask them to stay behind, talk about something, and then I can be like, look, I'm beginning to notice that you're beginning to do this, and I understand that you've got these extraneous circumstances, this family thing going on, and I commiserate. However, it's beginning to adversely affect the game. But what the cool thing is, because I have that signed paper, I can always point to it, and I've never had to. I've never actually had to, because people. It's funny that they, in their mind, in the back of their mind, they know, like when they open up their sheet, they see the consideration, so it reminds them of it each game, that we have this agreement. But it's there in case I ever do have to basically rules lawyer. I'd be like, look, we discussed this at the beginning, and you agreed to this behavior. Now, if you need to break that, if you need some special considerations, fine, but then we need to set up ground rules for that. Yes, you have a sick relative, whatever, that you're primary care for. So which means, like, you're not going to be able to be a game, and sometimes you're not going to be able to show up. You're going to have to cancel last minute, or but you can at least text me and let me know, because you're right now just not showing up, and we're not knowing, and we're waiting for like an hour for you to show up for game. That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So by having everyone review it together and then sign it, it adds enforcement, because they have bought into it. They have committed in their own minds to following those rules. So it's kind of a psychological trick I use. Oh God, I'm a horrible person. Um, and that's how I do it. And then stepping forward, that's how I deal with enforcement. Is because it's a communal agreement, it makes it easier to enforce. And actually, one of the things that reminded me of bringing this up is I'm actually and I wonder if my players are going to listen to this podcast before my next game, which is next weekend. It'd be interesting if they do. Because if they do, then they're going to know something's happened ahead of time. I've actually noticed, because my game considerations, like I said, are catch-all. It's not specific behaviors. But I have actually noticed in my group is freaking awesome. They write reports. They actually go home and write up reports about game. They do homework. I have a group that does homework.
Willfully does homework.
This is true. I have evidence. If anyone doesn't believe me, I'll send you a link. They do homework. They cosplay. They bring food. They're polite. They're respectful. It's amazing. And it's really funny how, I've got this group that's fantastic, but then there's this one thing that's begun to creep in, and it's this weird dice thing that's happening. I'm noticing three things, and I'm going to bring this up to my group. One is we're gaming in a very small space now on card tables that are pushed together. Mm-hmm. And I actually got a tablecloth to make it easier or whatever, but I've noticed that they're doing three things. One is they're kind of like starting to roll on the counter or the edge a lot, and a couple of them, and they're rolling on the floor a lot. Because I have the rule that we developed way back at RMA was because with the crappy conditions and because we're having to roll on our books all the time. Remember, people sit on the cots and they kept falling on the floor. So we came up with the player's advantage, where if it falls on the floor, they can call player's advantage and reroll. Especially, you know what I mean? And we did that, like you said. We always favor the player. So we created that as a favor to the player.
That rule has changed for me.
Really?
Yes. I pretty much have it to where if it rolls on the ground, just re-roll flat. I don't care. Because because when people like roll and it falls on the ground, like, oh, it's a 6 on the 1. I'm like, I don't give two shits. Re-roll it. Because then if it's a 1, they're like, oh, I want to re-roll. I'm like, yeah, you re-roll. See, I'd almost forgotten about that. I have actually changed that one. And I will also admit, before I let you continue, I will also admit I've thought up of a bunch of other various stuff that I've had since I've heard you talking, but I've actually kept my mouth shut. So continue.
Oh, I've been hearing the like vibration from here. But anyway, but no, so you modified that rule, and so what I was noticing is especially and it might have just been in my mind because I'm a suspicious person, but it seems like because the system that we use goes on a D4 D12 system, and it seems like they tended to roll on the floor a lot if it was a D4 or a D6. When it was a D12, they just confidently rolled them across the table. But it was when those less skilled rolls were being done, they kept winding up on the floor. That was the first thing I noticed. The second thing I noticed was that some of the guys were because again. And part of it is our play space is kind of restrictive, okay? And look, that's my bad because I don't have. I mean, I have a kid. I don't have room here with all her toys and stuff. So, but I'm noticing that they would roll their dice into their other dice, and sometimes they would roll in their hand, they'd throw them, and they'd smack into where their other dice were sitting, and then they'd be trying to pick the dice that they rolled out of this, the sort of like the pile of dice that was sitting there.
And, yeah, I've had that.
And you're like, wasn't it that 3? No, it was the 5. It was this die. And I'm like, are you sure? Like, yeah, no, it was this one. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, bullshit.
All right. And the last one is I've had, and this doesn't have it as much. I've had a couple of players who have a tendency to like roll and then like grab the dice before I have a chance to see them and tell me what the result was.
Yeah.
Which is a no-no. So what I've decided, and so this has been something that's bothering me because I got this group that just kicks so much ass, but they've got these rolling things, and keeping in mind that of the group, only like 2 of them gamed before most of these guys started with me, and I've been dealing with all this other stuff, and I've sort of let the dice etiquette kind of slide, and it's partially my fault. And I felt that it's incumbent upon me because these are the guys that learn. They're my students as well as my players. I need to modify and help them learn to do better dice etiquette. So if they go to another table, that guy's like, "Dude, you got a great player, but his dice etiquette sucks ass. What's wrong with you?" And I'd be like, "I'm sorry, I hadn't gotten around to tutoring them on that." So what I'm going to do, and here's the enforcement thing. How do you enforce this but make it even for everybody. So here's what I came up with, and Byron, feel free to comment. I'm actually putting it together this week and have it ready for this weekend. I'm actually making dice trays.
Yeah.
Making like professional dice trays for the table. I have three. I basically have three sides of the table. I have two people at each side, and possibly a third one coming on one side. But basically, so I'm making each side a dice tray, a custom, beautiful, hand done. I'm doing all the detail work myself. Felt lined on the inside, stained, not I mean, I'm pulling out all the stops. I'm doing this myself. I'm doing the work for them. But the rule's going to be then that when you roll dice. First of all, the dice tray has to be like an even. You have to. You can. The reason I'm doing dice trays is because they can set it on top of their books or on top of their character sheet, or heck, they can set it on top of the map for all I care. But the dice tray elevates the dice and separates it from the rest of the thing, so they won't be rolling into their dice. And it's because it's a dice tray, it won't roll onto the floor, right? Mm-hmm. And the rule is when you roll in the dice tray, if I don't see it, it's a fail. If you try to snatch it or move the dice tray before I have a chance to see it, then I'm going to assume that it failed. And that way, there's an actual play space. There's inbounds and out of bounds, just like in any sport. And that way, I'm providing them these beautiful dice trays to make their dice rolling, so they don't have to, move all their books aside every time they want to roll dice. And I get to enforce the rules uniformly without being a dick.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Sounds good to me. Actually, I remember Liz actually made dice trays for the group down in North Carolina one time. We found a design, and she contacted the guy, and he was like, "Yeah, sure, go ahead. As long as you're not like making money off of it." I think even then he was probably like, whatever. I still use mine. I still have the one she made for me, and I use it. I'm actually one of see that's the thing. Okay, dice etiquette. Here we go. See, my dice etiquette is, first and foremost, I'm one of those, I don't like other people touching my dice. Like, my core set. I do have the whore bag, which is which started at RMA. It was the bag because no one seemed to remember to bring their dice. And even though they lived like fucking 2 floors away, we only had an hour, so we couldn't wait. So I had a large bag of dice that I would let other people use, and that's its purpose, I remember I used to, my dice used to come from that set as well, but like I now have my own set that I roll, and I don't like other people touching that set. But I've got a group that currently, like out of the 4 or 5 players that we have, so this isn't including me. I've only got like 1 or 2 that actually physically roll dice. That everyone else uses an app or a spreadsheet. And I'm actually starting to think that I'm actually going to crack down on that. I understand why some people use the apps because it's quicker, it adds it up, and they can do it anywhere. But I got to tell you, man, especially this last session, the 6s were flying with this group.
Yeah.
And I just, I know. I've always kind of wondered with this group. Now, granted, we got one guy that does that telecommutes. He Skypes in. Yeah. And I actually do think he does physically roll dice. I think. The funny thing is he's one of the ones where the 6s were rolling pretty, the 6s were flowing, but for him, the 1s were flowing too. So I'm like, I'm not too concerned about it with him because I trust him. And I'd like to trust the others, but there are sometimes it's just like, they'll tell me a result of their roll, and I gotta look at them, and I'm like, and how many dice are you rolling? Because like,
I know.
There's sometimes it's just like, how the hell do you get a 30 some out of 4 dice? I'm really,
I know.
trying to, so, I'm wondering.
No, I feel you, and that's literally why. That's why I'm doing this thing, just because. Again, it's I want to think well of everybody. But the temptation to fudge is there. Heck, I mean, I think.
I think we discussed that like.
Yeah,
the first episode. Even I'm guilty of it.
Yeah, no, but the thing about his rules and so what I'm doing is for me is like, the way I do it is, I have a social contract with my players. And with this one, I'm just going to create a custom top of the line dice rolling tray for them, and then just say, look, I've done all this work for you. All I ask is that you roll the dice in there. Yeah. And I'll explain it to them. But like, look, first off, you don't have to, move all of your crap. You can just set the thing in front of you and roll it. Second of all, it's not going to roll off the counter, so you don't have, or table. You don't have to worry about that. Also, you don't have to worry about your other dice.
Depending on the design, I will admit, sometimes those dice do jump out.
They will, and I understand that, and especially when Ricky chucks them, because he throws them like a freaking baseball, and I understand that, and you have to dodge it occasionally, but whatever, it is what it is. But what I'm doing is by creating a universal thing that applies equally to everyone. No one gets singled out. No one feels like they're being picked on or whatever. Yeah. And it makes sense for the table space, because now we're going to have a place to roll dice where we don't have to worry about all the crap, because again, we have a pretty small and congested table space. And I've never really felt good about rolling on card tables. There's sometimes you really need to roll on something a little bit like felt covered hardwood is the best. And so that's why so I do work so that they will buy into it. That's the same with the social contract. Now, what am I going to do if one of the players, what do you do if a player hits one of your guidelines or rules and bucks at it? Well, the way I do it is I communicate with them. If it comes with the, although it's never happened in my game considerations, but if it comes with the dice thing, I'll pull them aside. I'll be like, hey, why do you have an issue with this? Well, blah blah blah. I'm like, what? Why do you have an issue with this? Well, I don't want other people to see what I'm rolling. I'm like, is that? For people who grab the dice, I'm like, what does it matter? They're going to know anyway when you tell me the result. So the only reason you would be hiding the dice is if you're trying to, change the numbers that were rolled. There's no reason. There's no other possible reason. I don't think you're cheating until you try to cheat, and then it becomes. Or when it comes to one of the rules, like, people like, look, I understand, you want people to, not use cell phones, during game or whatever it happens to be. I'm just using that as an example, but, I'm an EMT. I'm on call on game night. I need to use my cell phone. At which point I'd be like, cool. Yeah. As long as it's, you're using it for your work, I understand. I've got a daughter. If my wife calls me in the middle of a game, I'm stopping the game and I'm going to find out if my daughter's okay. But it's when you are talking to your girlfriend or boyfriend for 20 minutes in the middle of combat about, I don't know, what you're going to have to eat that night or something like that. That it's a little different. So I always try to talk with my players and reason, figure out where their conflict is coming and try to come up with a rational solution. But sometimes, as Byron has said, and I've said, you got to be a dick. Sometimes it's just, look, dude.
Yep.
The rule's the rule. I'm sorry. We just can't have you do it. You've got to wear something on the lower half of your body. I'm sorry. It's just, again, aren't you riding the bus? Like, how did you even get here? So sometimes you just have to enforce a rule. And yes, people get mad. And yes, this is just a game. And sometimes you just have to explain it to me. Like, I'm sorry. You either agree to do what is socially acceptable for everyone, or I'm sorry, you can't play. And that's just the way it is. And I hate to say it, but there are times when people's behavior, because it's so disruptive and so much of a detractor for the rest of the group, that sometimes you just have to crack the whip. That's your job as a GM, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Huh?
To be the bad guy sometimes?
Yeah, it sucks. I hate doing it. Thankfully, I've always been able to try to because I when I've had to enforce stuff like that with in my games, the only time I really laid down the what I would classify me laying down the smackdown was the come to Jesus meeting, and I did my homework. I spent all week just researching and talking to you, talking to Cyrus. And then I just came to the group and I was like, look, this is how it is. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. You got a problem with that, then fine, Because I was just like, the group was splitting apart. And I was like, okay, this side of the group, I was like, first, because part of what it was unfortunately there were 3 Force-sensitive people following the path of the Jedi. And then there were 3 other characters, one of which was Force sensitive but not going Jedi, the other of which was a complete vanilla, mortal, and then one that was testing, basically it was my technopathy, he was a technopath, which basically was he could use a force-like abilities, but only on machines. They couldn't do anything biological. So they couldn't do affect mind on a person, but they could do affect mind on a droid. And the idea was, it's kind of like with Neo, they could see the coding and then they could just change the coding. But anyway, so, and the plot of the campaign, the Jedi characters were the ones following the plot of the campaign. The others were wanting to break off and kind of do their own thing. And actually one of, the pure vanilla was like wanting to leave the Jedi on some deserted moon with no way of rescue, because
I've considered that before.
He felt they weren't playing the characters properly because they were holding the rest of the group back because of how the rules for force usage and following the Jedi code and whatnot work. So when I finally had to lay this do the come to Jesus meeting, and I pretty much came in guns ready, I opened with, I want to first and foremost want to congratulate the Jedi, the Jedi player characters, because they are doing it right. Like, I shut that shit down right off the bat. And I think now I might feel a little guilty about doing it, but at the time I was like, no, fuck that. Because I had to remind the group that playing Jedi is harder than playing a Paladin. And playing Paladins properly is not easy. So,
all right.
So, but from there, then I got diplomatic. And I always try to be diplomatic. Because I'm always like, okay, like you, I'm like, all right, obviously we got a problem with this. How can we fix this? What can we do? Why do we have the problem? Let's understand this and fix it. And so far that's worked for me. Knock on wood. But, pardon me. So like, I haven't really, I've been thinking about actually, like, coming up, actually writing down my rules and like maybe looking at yours and kind of stealing a bit of yours, fitting them for my situation, just so the group then knows, okay, this is what we've got. But like I said, knock on wood, I haven't really had to really, be a dick and just be like, no, out, go. Because either, like, I try to talk it out, or the problem solves itself. Either by the player, like, changes characters and then is okay, or they leave on their own before I have to kick them out. So I don't really remember an instance where I've aside from that one time in North Carolina where I've really had to be like, no, bitches. Of course, now that I've said that, I've probably cursed myself.
Oh yeah, no, you've jinxed yourself, dude. It's gonna happen tomorrow. You're not playing tomorrow.
Well, that would actually be wonderful, because then that would mean I'm gaming tomorrow.
I know, right?
Which I'd be happy for.
The thing is, and really the thing is as a GM, and I feel very strongly about this, that being a good GM, and I think I'm a pretty good GM at this point. Being a good GM is, I mean, yes, you're part referee. Because you have to enforce rules, you have to make judgment calls, you have to understand the mechanics and the world well enough to look at something and someone comes up with some cracked out idea, and you have to be able to make the mental gymnastics to go like, all right, first of all, is that even possible? Within the physics of this universe, is that possible? Second of all, since there's no mechanic that even remotely covers this, what's the best go-to? All right, let's go for it. So there's a certain referee side to it. You're kind of a babysitter, because, gamers have a tendency to be juvenile, and they get even more so when the minute you start playing games, because the fart jokes come out, and then like they're pretty much poking each other. It's like it really is sometimes like babysitting children. Billy, stop poking Sarah. Like literally, this kind of stuff happens. People throw food at each other, and it's all in good fun, so to speak. But you're also trying to achieve an objective. And so you have to be a babysitter. You also oftentimes, like I call like the counsel, the bartenders, that these people have personal lives, and they're coming to your game to escape. But sometimes they have a hard time letting go of whatever's getting them. I mean, heck, I'm going through some personal tragedies right now. So if I show up at the game and I've got all this stuff going on in my head, that can affect how I'm running my games or playing my games in the case might be. So part of it is you sometimes have to be their shoulder to cry on if they just had a bad breakup. They want to talk to somebody. Well, if you, it's kind of a mercenary calculation. But if you want the game to go, then you've got to help them unload that baggage so they can get back in the fight and kill some orcs, you know? So sometimes
I
have to be.
I was actually thinking. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's your podcast, dude. You can interrupt me whenever you.
Yeah, but I don't want to be a dick.
You can kick me out of the call and keep going, and nobody out there would give a crap. Jorge will be like, "Thank God you got rid of that guy."
Oh, I know. I'm sure if I did that, people would be like, "Fuck you," and I'd be like, "Well." But anyway, I actually had a thought of. It was interesting because this was before I knew what your topic was for this evening. On my way home from work, I actually had a thought. I was like, "What? How much will you bend to make sure the game stays fun and the players stay in your game and the game continues on? How much will you bend and how much will you break to keep that going?"
A lot. And actually, more to the point, I know you're thinking about mechanically, but how about out of life?
No. I'm actually talking about like the players, not necessarily the mechanics, but like what will you put up with? What will you what of your addendums here will you actually bend and sometimes break just to keep the group together and keep it going?
Moving furniture, marriage counseling, helping people through addictions. No, seriously, I've done it all. Staying up all night listening to someone cry because of some sort of pain. Like I mean, picking people up at airport. Like,
is that for a game, or is that just because that's the kind of friend you are? See,
no. You really can't divorce the two, because in a lot of cases, the things that I'm doing for these people are entirely because they're my players, and we have no social interaction outside of the game. I'm doing it for the game.
I was unaware of that. Because see, like I'm pretty much friends with. If you're in my gaming group, you're pretty much my friend. I mean, that's
it's not something I talk about a lot, actually, believe it or not. It's probably one of the few things I don't talk about at all, mainly because I'm worried about, ever revealing something personal about somebody that, you know what I mean? I don't want to air someone's dirty laundry on an open podcast. So I tried very hard not to talk about it, but I've done a lot. I mean, I've helped people through broken hearts. I've helped people through trouble spots in the marriage. I've met people, I've done a lot, for the game. Like, I've actually done it for the game. And yes, I'm friends with a lot of people, but sometimes the people that are in my games, I'm friends with everyone in my games, but I'm talking about, like, to get people to the games, like I can't go to the game because I got to do something. I'd be like, well, what happened? What if I go out there and help you do that? Like, what if I go out there and my wife will let me go to the game because I need all this lawn care done. I'm like, well, what if I meet you there Saturday and we do it together, and that way we can show up to the game on Sunday? And he's like, well, would you do that? I'm like, yeah, I do that for you. And, I do a lot for my games. I mean, I do a tremendous amount. People want to talk about characters, like all this sort of stuff, and I'll sit there on the phone all day with somebody going over all sorts of characters. Let them they want to get excited. They want to call me in the middle of the night. They want to come over and talk about character. I do it all. Whatever it takes for me. My wife's like, who are you talking to? I'm like, it's a player talking about games. She's like, Howard, it's like 3:00 in the morning. Why in the hell are you talking to a gamer? I'm like, because they're excited right now. They thought about something. They liked about my game, and they want to talk about it. And I'm like, the thing about it is you got to keep people interested, and if you cut them off, then all of a sudden, their enthusiasm might dim. And so, no, I do. How far will I go? Pretty damn far for my games, because
of course, as you're saying that, I'm like, I've done that to him. I've done that to him. I've done that to him. You negotiated with my mom to make sure we could come home one weekend.
Yes, but here's why, and I firmly believe that gaming is just, I mean, not just like any other sport, but gaming is like a sport. It's like a sports team. And I have obligations to these people. They are willing to set aside 4 or 5 hours out of their busy schedule. They're willing to arrange childcare. They're willing to negotiate with their wives to get time off on a weekend, which, being married, I understand.
Yes.
They're willing to spend time and money and energy and all of this stuff to show up my game. Drive. They're willing to put up with my family's crate. They're willing to do all this stuff to sit in a room with me and talk about, geeky stuff. I feel that if they're willing to put that much effort and that much energy into it, I owe them the courtesy and the respect to do what's necessary on my end, within reason, but what's necessary on my end to make sure that experience is the best it can possibly be. And so, yes, I do a lot of stuff out of game. It's the reason I have rules for my game. It's the reason I have the social contract. It's the reason that I do everything that I do. It's so that I just got a text from one of my players. She switched from my game because she moved to Colorado. So there's a Shintar game there, another flagship game, and she moved to that game. I wrote her a letter of recommendation from my NPC, my main NPC, physically gave it to her to hand to the post commander of that game so that her character would have a seamless transition from game to game. She had letters of recommendation and all of her promotional paperwork in a binder that she handed to the new GM so that he would in fact be able to read and know that she was, because
Not
she's
bullshit.
walking his game a legendary character, and she is more experienced and outranks everyone else in his game, and he has never met her before. She's walking in off the street more powerful and a higher rank than anyone in his game that's been in his game for a year.
Wow.
As a GM, that's rough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
rough because, she could be anybody. She could just come up with this character over the weekend and trying to bull crap him, right? So I gave her letters of recommendation. I gave her promotional part with with dates on. I gave her all of this information. So when she walked in, she said, "Here's my paperwork. This is proof that I've earned everything that I have." She actually they gave her an extra Benny. She got an in-game reward for having all of her paperwork because they thought it was the coolest thing they'd ever seen. They're like, "Holy crap, you came in with actual military paperwork for your promotion?" And she's like, "Yes, because of the post I came back from, we run our shit tight." But the thing about it was she was texting me. She's like, all of the work you do for us, like all the things that you write for us, and I'm like, I do it because I love the game. I do it for the game. Because that's my job. I'm a GM, and GM is not just the guy sitting behind the characters, the GM screen. He's not just the guy, coming up with scenarios. The GM is your friend. He's your counselor. He helps you move. He picks you up when you need it. He feeds you, gives you money if you're too poor to show up at the game. Being a GM is more than just running games. It is changing lives. That's the way I feel.
And thank you, Howard, for making all the rest of us feel like schmucks. Now.
No. Wait a minute. Hold the hell up. Stop for a second. Who is my first GM?
Me.
We are 18 years later on a podcast. I'm running an internet.
Joking, mind you, but
I know, but think about it. Talking about changing lives. If I had not met you, if you had not invited me to that first Star Wars game in the detention room at Randolph freaking Macon Academy, where would I be today?
I have no clue, but I know where the hell I would be.
But that's my point. You changed my life. You changed the entire trajectory of my life. You have given me something that I've cherished ever since, and it has grown and paid dividends. And that was because you put the extra time in to help me out. And yes, we helped each other out, but I'm talking about GMing. I take my model from you. You changed my life.
Which I'm sorry, dude. I find I take this as a sense of the student has surpassed the master, because I mean you and I have always argued as to who's the better GM.
Clearly, you.
See, I'd actually argue that, but I'm glad we've at least found the middle ground that at least we can agree on who does certain things better.
Yes.
So we're kind of even keel, but I still see your GMing career as definitely surpassing the master, because I mean, yeah, I know I'm a good GM, and again, not to toot my own horn, because I've got players across 5+ states that will tell me and anyone else most of the time that I'm an awesome GM. So like I'm not just saying that to toot my own horn. I've got the people behind me, that are I'm just voicing what they're saying. But I still feel that some of the stuff that your players have done, that you have done for me, and like even my like in the Epic game, I'm just like, there's sometimes I'm just like, I really should, be able to do at least that, if not more. And,
but see, but the thing about it is I look at Amber and I look at Ricky and I look at JJ and I look at, I mean, going back, like there's so many, there's too many to count. I look back and I look at all these people, And I think about changed lives, and people come to you afterwards and tell you about, how they were going through a dark period of their life, or they were coming to a new city, or whatever, and they didn't have any friends, they didn't have any contacts, they felt isolated, and they, just, or they walked into, they just got to college, and they looked up at the posting board, and they're like, what, I don't know anybody, so let me find a club. And they happen to see role playing, like, what's this? And they happen to see your name, and they pull the thing down, and a decade later you're invited to their wedding. That kind of stuff. And the point is that it's such a social thing. We talked about it last podcast. It's such a social thing that gaming, you say you're friends with everyone in your game, and I agree. I make friends. Many of the people that I consider family came out of games. That's where we met. That's certainly not what defines our relationship now. But look at you and me.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, gaming is a huge part of our relationship, but it doesn't actually, in my case, doesn't define it, because our relationship transcends gaming. I mean, if you and I never said the word gaming one more time in our lives, never going to happen. But if it did,
my first thought would be, what the fuck is wrong?
I know, but it would never change it would never change the dynamic of our relationship, because our relationship is so much bigger and broader and so much deeper than even a game. As much as passionate as we are. But what I mean is that games are transcendent, and they can change lives for the better. And they do change the trajectory, because they can be so all-encompassing. And they can be a place where people with a speech impediment, or people with social anxiety, or people who are just lost, or people who are hurting, to go to, get away from their life for a little bit and heal. How many people have sat at your table that are hurting? Maybe it's a breakup. Maybe it's family issues. Maybe it's money issues. Maybe it's they just feel socially awkward, or they're lost, or whatever. How many of them have sat at your table, myself included, that you gave them a safe harbor to talk about something they were passionate about, to have a place that they felt that it was their home, that gave them the time that they needed to heal, that you gave them a shoulder to cry on, that later on they went off, and they may never have came back and thanked you, but you know that you were the place that they were safe long enough to heal.
See, in my case, I'm not sure I can answer that, because I don't know. And I don't know if it's because just I'm not as observant because I'm so into the game, or because they haven't come and told me. I do know it has happened, but I couldn't begin to tell you an actual number, because sometimes I have been blind to it before.
See, what our podcast listeners, the 2 or 3 of you out there, don't understand is that when his gamers get together, this man walks on water. So do not listen to a word he is saying right now. Like, seriously, dude.
Oh,
you are the Queezax Hatterack to your people. You are. Like, I hear them, like, the Epic game, the way they talk about you. I mean, like, seriously. They're literally building monuments in your honor in their backyards, okay? So don't even
guess
try.
what? They're not telling me. I'm not seeing pictures.
But I'm hearing.
And actually, I will fully admit, actually, when I ended the Star Wars game, I knew I had strife. I knew I had screwed that one up. But I admitted it. I was like, I'm rushed. I wanted to get this done. I had various things. Fuck it, it's done. Moving on. So
Yeah.
I am not the Jesus Christ of freaking game.
Look, I didn't say you were infallible. You're not the Pope. But again, neither am I. I am certainly not the Pope. But what I mean is it's just
definitely deviated, but
yes. But what I mean is that this is it, for me. It's more of a hobby. It really is. It's almost a calling. I hate to say it. And as a psychologist, I don't like doing therapy. Like, I really don't. But gaming is therapy, and I've helped so many people via gaming.
It's broken some people too, if I remember right. But.
Yeah. But hey, you had to sign a psychological waiver just to get into that game, Chuckles. So, like, you knew what you were getting into when you started. But
no. I ain't talking about me.
No. I'm talking about. No, I'm saying. No, I'm talking. That was the Dark campaign, and yes, you had to sign a waiver. My players signed a waiver, and a couple of them got broken. It's okay. But what I mean is that I treat gaming very professionally. That's why I guess I'm strict with the rules, because I'm trying to create.
See, that so highlights the differences between you and I.
Yes.
Especially what I learned back in RMA. You're the very logical, analytical one. I'm the very passionate one.
Yep.
I go balls to the walls. The only problem is I'm passionate with ADHD. So I go balls to the walls until I see shiny. and that translates into our game or into our GMing styles too, because again, I'm very much off the cuff. I'm very in the moment. Whereas you are the the fucking shadow master. Nicodemus.
Pulling strings.
Huh?
Pulling strings.
Yep. So, anyway, I think we need to wrap this up.
Yep.
So, because we got real deep with this one. I'm not complaining, but it's
we always do.
Well, I don't know if we go this deep before, but we definitely tangent. So, but anyway.
And we taught people how to load and unload a cannon, if it ever comes.
Or at least the danger.
Would it be epic if we got a post, like a response to this post, like in like 5 years, where it's like, dude, you won't believe this, but I was at an event and like a guy got hurt and they were trying to unload this cannon, this reenactment. I wasn't even there for the reenactment. I was just there for the for the festival. And sure enough, they needed help. And I heard your podcast 5 years ago, and I was like, I know how to do that.
I would probably either think it's a joke or pee myself. I don't know which.
I would be laughing so hard. Anyway,
so if you have any questions, comments, concerns, what the fucks, or any suggestions on topics or whatnot, or any feedback on stuff we've been, again, as always, we'd love to hear back from you guys. You can email us, tweet us, catch us on the blog, or catch us on the YouTube, on the YouTube videos. So, yeah. So, thank you for joining us this week. Hopefully you will join us next week. And I have been your GM, Byron.
I've been your lovely co-host, Howard.
I'm sorry? Wife.
I know, but it's like, it's such a catch.
Sometimes I wonder, but you are not.
I think our wives do. Actually wonder on occasion. Especially early in our relationship, because how much you and I hung out and talked, my wife's like, who's this guy again?
No, see, because I tell so many stories of you. Liz knew.
I know, but it's like, you went to military academy together, right? And I'm like, yeah, but we weren't roommates. That was perfect. Love you, Burger.
Anyway, just remember the motto of Roll High Game. It's roll high, play well, die hard.
You were flipping your mic around.